Okay, page 568.
Thank you.
Certainly. All right. This is a beautiful little passage. I cheated a little bit and was reading it earlier to enjoy it. Ramakrishna is talking, and he says, when a man has true knowledge, right? We know that true knowledge is not relational knowledge that's stored in the head. It's a knowledge that comes beyond words. It's a knowing that can't be described, that comes from inside. It's a knowledge of what you are. It's a knowledge of what we were talking about just a moment ago. That knowledge of that pure love that radiates constantly and equinim, equin, equanimally. I think I made that up.
Equanimity.
Yeah, but it
Equanimity.
flows out of you in
Equanimity.
every direction perfectly. There's never a condition. There's never. It's like body heat. It's like body heat, and really we are living. I don't know if you could how to describe this. Have you ever seen when if you boil water in a glass pan, those kind of weird clear waves that go through the water as it's heating up? I always get the idea that this universe that we're dwelling in right here, that pure love is the body heat of God. And that body heat, as it comes off of the divine presence, her isness, moves around. Hi, Chase. Moves around in as the universe. The universe is that turbulent, clear color where there's nothing but water there. There's nothing but the divine love there. But somehow something is making it appear as action or as separate. Somehow it's changing the way it looks, even though it's all just water. And this universe is that same sort of thing. Is that in that it's all love, it's all Brahman, all God. We don't see anything in it, but somehow egoism causes these kind of seeming disturbances in that divine love, and accordingly the universe appears to us. We experience this universe. And so he says, when a man has this true knowledge, this deep knowing of oneself as pure love, that everything is filled with consciousness, right? And we know what consciousness is. Consciousness is awareness with objects in it, right? Just to remind us of that. Pure awareness, which is God, has no objects in it. It is because everything is God, one without a second. That's the ultimate truth. And when you put an object in there, like in your mind, when you have nothing in your mind, it's just God. And then when you put an object in there, it becomes consciousness. And so the true knowledge, the knowledge that seekers are concerned with, is this knowledge that's inherent to us that we're often not aware of because we're paying attention to our senses and our memories and mind, and we get distracted from what's coming from behind that. What is that energy that comes through us before body and before mind? And that is true knowledge, that everything we see is formed of that and is filled with consciousness. He says at Karmarpakor, which is where Ramakrishna was born and raised, I used to talk to Shibu, who was then a lad of 4 or 5 years old. When the clouds rumbled and lightning flashed, Shibu would say to me, "There, uncle, they're striking matches again." Everyone laughs. But one day I noticed him chasing grasshoppers by himself. The leaves rustled in the nearby trees. "Hush, hush," he said to the leaves. "I want to catch the grasshoppers." He was a child, and he saw everything throbbing with consciousness. One cannot realize God without the faith that knows no guile, the simple faith of a child. And it's funny that he says that, because it reminds me, that's exactly what childhood was like. And even as an adult, I mean, have you ever stubbed your toe and gone back and punished the bed, you know, for stubbing your toe? And so there is this innate seeing of everything as living, everything as having consciousness in it. And the reason that this is true is quite simple, that we don't live in a material world. That's why science has not been able to really define matter. It's because matter doesn't really exist. The fundamental particles seem to exist as a wave and as a particle, and it can switch back and forth between those two states. And the reason for this is that we live in a mind. We live in the universal mind, and our egoism uh, cuts out a segment of that universal mind that we call my mind, right? Because if one of the fun things when you meditate or when you're sitting there being quiet inside, you come to realize that yourself, your consciousness, your awareness inside does not have a geolocation. You can't tell where it is. And it's partially because, existence is very much like a dream. And in a dream, you do not exist inside the dream body because the whole dream is inside you when you're dreaming, right? You're the sleeper in the bed. And yet in the dream world, it feels like your awareness is inside the dream body that you're experiencing the dream with. But the truth of it is that your consciousness covers the entire dream. The whole dream exists within it. And Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, an enlightened soul out of Bombay, who used to make cigarettes actually, which I love, that he says that is the reality, that this consciousness is all around us. And that Ramakrishna says that when this consciousness is pure, which means when we have no sense of me or mine, no particular sense of ourself, that and Brahman, that and God is the same, right? And so this is why we spend our time trying to purify the mind, to get rid of the waves, because objects are really just waves in mind. They're thought, right? So everything is a thought. And so Ramakrishna is saying when we begin to see the world as living and throbbing with consciousness, being alive, we begin, that's the beginning, the stirrings of seeing God everywhere in everything. And that knowledge is that kind of simple faith, that kind of openness to that idea rather than the summation of your thinking or the summation of your experience as being real, that the consciousness itself is the only reality you know, and you know that it is everywhere. It's all around you. That's how you are aware of it, because that light of consciousness is the light of awareness. So anything that you are aware of is a wrinkle or a wave in your mind, as thought, right? So everything is a thought. All objects, all events, all memories, all activities, all future are simply thoughts that we observe. We ourselves, we've talked about this quite a bit, so I won't belabor it too much more. But you are the light in a movie projector. You never change. You are that light of awareness, absolute unchanging. And your mind, your local mind, is like that little window that's right in front of that light through which time-space causation passes like film, right? And your light of awareness lights it and interprets movement, interprets stories from what is passing through it. Your whole life is passing through you, but you remain unchanged. You are the actual light of awareness, light of love, if you like, the nature of God. That shines through this film of time-space causation and consequently observes the world, creates a story, creates a movie. And that movie is your egoism, your particularity that then describes God from your particular vantage point. And whenever you have a particular vantage point looking at God, you'll never see the whole thing. You'll never understand the whole thing. It's like standing in the Library of Congress and reading one sentence out of a book. That's your local awareness, but God is every book in the room, every sentence in the room, but you're not aware of them at that moment. You're just reading that one passage in that one book. And so the Library of Congress shrinks itself down to the effect of that one sentence in that one book for you in that one moment. And that's sort of how we see God, how we experience life. But if you see the whole, there's no change in it. The whole, every book and every sentence exists in its potential at that moment, unexpressed, the absolute unchanging, one without a second kind of idea. He says, "Oh, what a state of mind I passed through. One day something bit me while I was sitting in the grass. I was afraid it might have been a snake, and I didn't know what to do. I had heard that if a snake bites you again immediately after its first bite, that it takes back its own venom. So that's some village wisdom there. That's really funny because look what he says here. He says, knowing that, at once I set out to discover the hole that the snake lived in so that I might let the snake bite me again. While I was searching, a man said to me, "What are you doing?" And after listening to my story, he said, "But the snake must bite you in the very same place that it bit you before." Thereupon I went away. Perhaps I'd been bitten by a scorpion or some other insect. Right? So that guilelessness, that trust, that openness, right? That's not this. There's no cynicism. There's no sarcasm there. It's a pure, innocent accepting, seeing what you see as real and seeing it as full of consciousness and being alive and being friendly to you, right? That's the assumption. That child that saw the grass was chasing the grasshopper and wanted the leaves to be quiet. There's no threat there, no fear there. Shh, I'm trying to catch the grasshopper. So that is the divine. There's no fear, there's no threat there. That's why as we realize God, we lose the idea of fear because we know the nature of the universe as pure love, and we know our nature as being pure consciousness, that we are never in danger. That the physical body may be in danger, the mind may be in danger, but we ourselves are always free. We're the container of the dream, unaffected by the dream. And it's only because we choose a point of reference in the dream that it comes to life for us and seems threatening, even though we wake up to peace. We wake up unaffected by the occurrence in the dreams. I had heard from Ramlal that the autumn chill was good for one's health. Ramlal had quoted a verse to support it. And one day, as I was returning from Calcutta in a carriage, I stuck my head out of the window so that I might get all the chill. Then I fell ill. Everyone laughs. This is interesting because he's saying that even though you have this guilelessness, you will believe wrong things at times, but then experience will teach you, right? It'll say, well, you weren't right on that one. And so this moment that we live in, as we know, is the I am. It is God, and it is self-regulating. It's self-correcting. And that's why we know that, as Prabhupada said, that in the light of awareness, the knots of Maya, the knots of our delusion, untie themselves. So we believe lots of wrong things right now about God, about ourselves, about the universe. But he's saying that doesn't matter because we dwell in God, and as we walk through God guilelessly means accepting and being open to the reality, to learning, to letting go of old stuff, to not getting attached and holding on to wrong ideas and wrong thinking, that if we have that openness, that surrender of ego, then it's self-correcting. All you have to do is realize that you have a fault or that something is inaccurate in the way that you're perceiving yourself and God. And just that awareness itself is not just an empty awareness, it's the expression of Sat Chit Ananda, pure love, pure wisdom, and being. And so it corrects you, it brings you to truth. And so all of us are on our way to truth simply because we are. Because what we are is surrounding us and is constantly teaching us in the moment. Every action and every thought in a day is a prayer. And the response of the universe is the answer to that prayer. Right? And so it's pain or difficulty when we're not thinking correctly, when we're not acting correctly. And it's beautiful and encouraging when we are acting correctly. That's why we feel great when we're kind to somebody and why we hurt when we're not. Because we dwell within the divine, and the divine is always walking with us and always informing us and always teaching us in love. Sri Ramakrishna entered his room and sat down. His legs were a little swollen. He asked the devotees to feel his legs and see whether or not the pressure of their fingers made dimples. Dimples did appear with the pressure, but the devotees said that it was nothing. So you see that guilelessness, just no shame, just come look at my legs. Is that a problem? Look, they're fat. And what's interesting is just yesterday on Mother Monday, we read of Shri Sharda doing the same thing, with the Swami, pressing on her leg to make the impression and showing, look, it stays, and had him touch it and asking and wanting to know, is that okay? What is the meaning of that? Right. So it's that guilelessness. There's no shame, there's no embarrassment, there's no protective element. There's just that trusting, guileless openness of a child, right? A loving surrender. Master to Bhavanat. Please ask Mahendra of Sinti to see me. I shall feel better if he reassures me. Bhavanat with a smile. You have great faith in medicine, but we haven't so much. Master. It is God who, as the doctor, prescribes the medicine. It is he who in the form has become the physician. Dr. Ganga Prasad asked me not to drink water at night. I regarded his statement as the words of the Vedas. I look upon him as the physician of heaven. Hazra entered the room and sat down. The master talked a while about different things and then said to Hazra, you see, many people were at Ram's house yesterday. Vijay and Kedar and others were there. But why did I feel so deeply stirred at the sight of Narendra? You know, that was who would become Swami Vivekananda. I found that Kedar belonged to the realm of divine inebriation, right? That level of divine joy which exists within you. If you are fortunate enough to quiet the mind enough to find your shrine in the heart, and then you can find your proper seat in the shrine of the heart, and you can find a proper silence in yourself. You can sit in the direct experience of the radiance of the joy of God, the presence of God that we talked about that creates the universe like those waves in the boiling water or in the water about to boil. And so within you, you have that potential. You know, this is really a means of finding the divine. As you go inside and you explore your inner world, you'll touch it at some point, and a little zing will come through you, a little zing of bliss or joy. It could be very faint at first. Sometimes you get a big jolt. You never know. Sometimes in the first couple of years of practice, I found that Mother was very generous to us when we first start our practice. She'll often give you a little something up front. St. John of the Cross calls it the wound of the kiss. You know, that Christ would give him a kiss, gave him a kiss on the neck and left a wound. And that was meaning that experience, that blissful experience, becomes the motivation at some level, or the promise of something more. And so it kind of gets you going, gets you curious about what's in there, and gets you looking. And it's a wound because that's what remains when Christ again recedes behind your delusion, or when the divine recedes behind your delusion. Not because it actually recedes, but because you don't hold your attention on it for very long. And so it leaves a wound, a memory of this beauty that now isn't the experience, and leaves you hungry for it, leaves you looking for it. So Kedar belongs to the realm of divine inebriation. At this weekend at the retreat, we watched this movie from 1954 called what was it? Do you remember? Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna was the name of it. Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. And it was from 1954. And the amazing thing was that it was filmed at the Dakshineshwar temple. And so you got to see what Dakshineshwar was like in 1954. And it's on YouTube. So if you do a search for it, you can find it there.
I was filmed at Dakshineshwar.
Yeah, it's there. It's right there. You can see the places. That's why I was so drawn into it. Because when I've been there were thousands of people thronging everywhere. You know, it was noisy and crazy. But when Ramakrishna in 1954, there was nobody there. Hardly anybody knew who he was at that time. It hadn't really, well, it had started getting around, but the Vedanta centers around the world were few and not nearly like it is these days. And yeah, and so I was saying, in that movie they show the event when Girish Ghosh, that what shall we say, a bohemian a bohemian lifestyle, very much given to drinking and the enjoyment of life. And he sees Ramakrishna in a divine state, inebriated, you know, by the thought of God, by the reality of the divinity within himself. And he gets totally fixated that Ramakrishna is God, that Ramakrishna is able to get more drunk off of the thought of God than I ever have off of any bottle of alcohol, he says. And so he starts coming to Ramakrishna because he wants to learn the source of this divine love. And the most beautiful thing to me was that, he came to Ramakrishna, and Ramakrishna is telling him about the love of God, and how that love of God is everywhere present and always available. And he says, but do I have to give up drinking? And Ramakrishna actually laughs and says, no, that's just an external thing. The mother will remove that when it's time. And you see, this speaks very much to what we've been talking about over the last couple of months about your practice is really a state of opening, surrendering, sitting in the light, in the same way that you get a suntan. You do it by making yourself available to the light and focusing on it, and you get a tan that way. In that same way, the regular thought of God, the regular exposure to the divine presence within yourself will take away the faults of your outer character. It will iron out the twists of your mind called egoism that distort the love of God that comes out of you and makes it particular. Takes away its universal nature and uses it to assert itself for its own advantage, the ego's advantage. And so by sitting in that light with awareness, in that awareness, it's self-correcting. God is the one who is leading you forward and changing you and removing the wrinkles in the mind. So you just make yourself available. You don't have to become a type A Olympic champion. You simply relax and open up like an Olympian champion who's already won the gold. He just kicks back and watches. No more stress, no more concern. And so that's how we sit in the presence of God, with the faith that our realization is already ours because it comes through grace, right? And so, but it has to be that regular exposure to the divine thought, to the divine image within yourself. Presently, Narendra arrived, and Sri Ramakrishna was exceedingly happy. Narendra saluted the master and began to talk with Bhavanath and others in the room. M was seated nearby. A long mat was spread on the floor, and while talking, Narendra lay on it flat on his stomach. The master looked at him and suddenly went into samadhi. He sat on Narendra's back in an ecstatic mood. I love these things when they happen because they're so unusual. So Narendra's laying on the floor on his stomach, and Ramakrishna goes into samadhi, which means that he is seeing the divine everywhere. Because he's moving in the thing, he's not at the highest samadhi where he's, like a piece of wood, where he's no longer at all identified with the body. This is just below that, where he's still aware of the body, but he's intoxicated. He can't quite control it properly. And he goes over and he sits on Narendra. So while he's sitting on Narendra's back in an ecstatic mood, Bhavanath's saying, "O mother, ever blissful as you are, do not deprive your worthless child of bliss." Sri Ramakrishna came down from the plane of samadhi and sang, "Repeat, O mind, my mother Durga's hallowed name. O Gauri, O Narayani, O to thee I bow. You are the day, O mother, you are the dusk and the night. As Rama, you draw the bow. As Krishna, you play the flute. As Kali, all terrible, you have silenced Shiva, your lord. The 10 embodiments of divine Shakti are you, and you, the 10 avatars, the 10 incarnations. This time save me, you must. With flowers and bilwa leaves, Yashoda worshipped you, and you blessed her by placing Krishna, the child, in her arms. Wherever I chance to live, O mother, in forest or in grove, may my mind, day and night, dwell at your lotus feet." Right? And that's that prayer, that I might always be in that light of awareness, that I might never forget the nature of myself and the nature of this universe, so that I can understand this universe properly, so that I can hear the teaching of the moment for myself, so that I can let go of my error, my wrong seeing, so that I can experience that love continually. Whether at last I die a natural or a sudden death, oh, may my tongue repeat Durga's name at the end. You may send me away, O mother, but where shall I go? Tell me, Ma, where else shall I hear so sweet a name? You may even say to me, step aside, go away. Yet I will cling to you, O Durga, cling to your feet. Oops. Sorry about that. I got a phone call from somewhere. Right. But where shall I go, O mother? Tell me where I shall hear such a sweet name. You may even say to me, step aside, go away. Yet I shall cling to you, O Durga. I'll cling to your feet, as your anklets I shall cling, making their tinkling sound. O mother, you sit at mighty Shiva's side. Then I will cry from your feet, victory to Shiva. Mother, when as a kite you soar in the sky, there in the water beneath as a minnow I shall be swimming. Now a kite here is a bird. It's not a book. It's not a kite on a string. It's a bird. And so he says, where is it? Mother, when you as this bird, as this kite soars in the sky, there in the water beneath as a minnow I will be swimming. Upon me you will pounce and pierce me through with your claws. Thus, when the breath of life forsakes me in your grip, do not deny me the shelter of your lotus feet. From the world's bondage, free me, O spouse of the Absolute. Your 2 feet are my boat to cross this world's dark sea. You are the heavens and the earth. You are the netherworld. From you have the 12 Gopalas and Hari and Brahma sprung. Whoever treads the path repeating Durga, Durga, Shiva himself protects him with his mighty trident. Right. And so the first time I read this poem, I was kind of overwhelmed with all of these names, Durga and Shiva and all these different people I didn't understand. And I, at one time, began to, study and delve into all of them to find out what they were. But then I stopped because Mother said that she was the embodiment of all gods and goddesses. Ramakrishna was the embodiment of all gods and goddesses. So now a much simpler way of reading these truths is to not get caught up in who's who and try and find out all of the information about it, but understand all of them are referring to that divine love dwelling within you, manifested in a Jesus, in a Buddha, in a Rama, in a Ramakrishna, in a Holy Mother. That these incarnations are all the incarnations of the same one without a second, always teaching us in different parts of the world at different times, through different cultures, through different environments, and through different need, that this one without a second is always approaching us. So as a Westerner, I think that's a great way to approach these things, because I know because the culture comes up with a lot of Christian traditions, I feel sometimes in myself a little tinge of like, ooh, when I read about all these different gods and goddesses, and while I know that they are all one, and I know that they are all manifestations of the one without a second, it's easier if I can just put them all in Ramakrishna, right? Or if I can put them all in the Divine Mother, then I don't have to worry about the particulars, because the particulars don't matter. It's the love and the beauty of God behind all of them that we're looking at. And so Vivekananda says, when you sit at a shrine, whether it's a shrine of Kali or Durga, of Jesus or Buddha, when you sit at the shrine, you don't look at the image and stop there at the personality, at the presentation of that image. You look through that image to the divine behind it. You see the oneness that is behind all of the images, behind all of the visions of the divine, all possibilities. And so you see through that whole song, Ramakrishna is really just begging, just asking Mother, please don't let me get carried away by my thoughts. Don't let me get carried away by my experiences, by my fear of the future, or by my longing for the past. Don't let me be detracted from the present moment, the moment that is you, the moment that is divine, full of light and love. Help me always to remember the nature of everything so that I can see, so that I can be, so that I can be at peace, so that I can love fairly, and so that I can act with confidence, knowing that ego is not deluding me, not causing me to be unkind, not causing me to be ungentle, not causing me or allowing me to feel fear, but to be surrendered and to enjoy my spiritual suntan. as I make myself available to you, to your light and to your love. Hazra was sitting on the Hazra was sitting on the northeast veranda counting the beads of his rosary. The master went and sat in front of him, taking the rosary in his own hands. The master to Hazra, you see, I cannot use the rosary. No, well, perhaps I can. Yes, I can with my left hand, but I can't repeat the name of God with it. With these words, Sri Ramakrishna tried to perform a little japa, but hardly had he begun when he went into samadhi. You see, that's why he couldn't do it. Not that there was anything right or wrong with using the beads. It's just that when you use the beads, each time you repeat the name, you have to advance one bead, right, through the rhythm of it. And he would repeat the name of God just once and just go into samadhi and would forget that he had a hand, let alone a rosary in it. He was just overcome with the love of God. That's what we're that's what we're shooting for, not so that we sit there bored to death, moving through a hundred thousands of beads each time, one da 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 da, but to have that remind us of the reality that the name invokes. The name and the form cannot be separated. That's the power of mantra meditation, is when you say God's name, by necessity, the form of God appears in your heart, in your mind, right? And in the formless, it appears, well, it appears as you see it, actually, in the beginning. That's why every path is unique, that every person is his own or her own religion, right? And that all paths, as long as they're done with sincerity and earnestness, lead us to the goal, because we are that we seek. It's not something external to us. It's not something given to us. It's what we are at the very core. We are the dreamer, not the characters in the dream. And to come to know that is to find love, true love. Just like in The Princess Bride. I'm searching for that true love. The devotees looked at him with wonder in their eyes, right? Because that's really not our experience, that we hold the beads and in one time, one bead, and we're gone. We're lost in love. So everybody's just staring at him like, oh my, wow, right? With wonder in their eyes, Hazra also watched the master without uttering a word. After a long time, Sri Ramakrishna regained consciousness of the outer world and said that he was hungry. He often did this, not because he was hungry, but because he had to form an attachment to get back into the body, to come back down into this step into the dream again, so that he could see it as real, so that he could teach, so that he could love, so that he could inspire us as we're sitting here right now. To bring us forward, to bring us toward our purpose, the fulfillment of the purpose of being, of our life itself. He said he was hungry. He explains, he often said such things to bring his mind down to the normal plane. M was going to bring something for him to eat. The master said, no, I'll go first to the Kali temple, right? So even though he formed this desire to hold him down, to into the body, into this world, when he finally gets into that place, then he gives up that worthless desire. And the first thing he wants to do is go to the Kali temple, go and see the manifestation of the Divine Mother in this world. And so that's what we do in this world, that we're looking for the image of God. And as we mature, that image moves out of temples, moves out of churches, moves out of pictures and statues, and begins to manifest in ourself. And as it begins to manifest within ourself, we begin to see it and are reminded of it everywhere. We look at a beautiful sunset. That's the easy one. Like, the beauty of the divine, right? All things in this universe, all of them, everything points at the divine, right? And so we're not to go running after the things themselves. We look through the sunset to the beauty of God manifested in that sunset. We look through our best friends to the manifestation of love that's in that person, right? And by doing that, when that person dies, we still have that experience of love when we think of them. And we know that that was the presence of God, and that's who they really were. So we lost nothing. We can always remember them and feel that love arise inside. That was them, that is them. And so death, we find our transcendence that way. We find our peace with the temporary that way, knowing that everything is coming out of the divine and returning to the divine, and that we are not out here. We are the divine from which everything is coming and everything is returning. So that is what he's showing us here. He went across the cement courtyard toward the Kali temple. On the way, he bowed with folded hands to the 12 Shiva temples. On the left was the temple of Radhakanta. He went there first and bowed before the image. Then he entered the Kali temple and saluted the mother. Sitting on the carpet, he offered flowers at the mother's holy feet. He also placed a flower on his own head. While returning from the temple, he asked Bhavanath to carry the green coconut offered at the temple and the Charanmitra. Coming back to his room, accompanied by M and Bhavanath, he saluted Hazra, who cried out in dismay. So he honored Hazra, and Hazra cries out in dismay because he's unworthy. And then here a divine being has saluted him, and in that paradigm, he feels that now there's some karma on him, that he has gotten more than he deserved, and somehow he's going to have to pay back this deposit of grace. Right? It's a kind of a funny response there. What are you doing, sir? What is this? And the master said, why should you say it's wrong? Hazra often argued with the master, declaring that God dwelt in all beings and that everybody could attain Brahma-jnana, the knowledge of Brahman, the knowledge of God, through sadhana, through spiritual practice. He had an exaggerated idea of his own spiritual practice, right? So I instantly get uncomfortable because, of course, we all feel that way. We like to present ourselves as a bit more than we are, right? And that's the ego. It's good to be aware of that. I remember I tell this story a lot. One time when I was in the DC center, when I was posted there, one day I had some extra time and it occurred to me to go to the shrine and do some meditation. I was like, oh, gosh, that's so rare that I'm free and I don't have anything to do, that I desire to go and do practice. That was early on like that. And I thought, and I went in there and I was sitting there doing my meditation, and I heard the back door of the auditorium open and close, and I heard somebody come walking in and walk through and go out the side entrance. And my mind was just so happy because somebody had accidentally caught me in the temple at a time when I didn't have to be there, and I thought, oh, I'm getting all this spiritual credit here. People are going to think I'm super spiritual because I'm in here doing practice when I don't have to, right? And that's the danger when we don't remember that the impetus to do spiritual practice is a sign of the grace of Mother. Right? Mother says, if you are walking down the street and your mantra occurs in your mind, know that Mother has touched you with grace. She has allowed you to speak her name and to be reminded. And so this is how we practice, so that we, I should have known and do know now, when you sit in the shrine, it's not your merit. It's not your anything. Mother has touched you and has allowed you to think of her and has inspired you to find the shrine within. And so take advantage of that. If it's especially auspicious if there's nothing that causes it. If you're walking just down the street and just spontaneously your mantra occurs to you, it's a wonderful remembrance. Mother is just touching you. She's always present, but most of the time we're not interested. Most of the time we're interested in what we're looking at or what we're feeling, what we're touching, right? But to have something come from behind, from before the mind, before the body, and whisper the name of the divine, then you're on your way. Mother has touched you, has given you a gift. It was about noon. The gong and the bells announced the worship and offering in the various temples. The Brahmins, the Vaishnavas, and the beggars went to the guest house to have their midday meal. The devotees of the master were also to partake of the sacred offerings. See, so at the temples, many of the temples in India are always feeding. There's temples that feed tens of thousands of people a day. It's staggering. That's just the tradition, that the hungry should always be able to be fed at the temple, from the prasad of the beloved. And so that's a big tradition. And I, at the center at the headquarters of the Ramakrishna order, who is the one that populates the the people in the Santa Barbara temple there. I've been there when they're having one of these big worships, and they have pots, cooking pots, that are so big that there's a ladder propped up against the side, and they cook with shovels. I kid you not, they cook with shovels. And like weeks before that worship is going to happen, they build these giant fire pits that they can set these giant, enormous pots over. And they just fill them with bag after bag after bag of rice and lentils. And then they fill it with the hose with water, until it's full. And then they cook, and it cooks for I don't know how long, but they're up there, with these shovels stirring, standing on the ladder to feed literally tens of thousands of people. They have a new a dining hall at Bellarmont that can feed 10,000 people at a sitting. That's what I heard anyway from one of the brahmacharis. They can feed 10,000 people at once. It's like 5 stories high, this dining hall. So they can feed that many people every day. It's such a wonderful tradition. Oh, that people don't have to go hungry. After his meal, Sri Ramakrishna rested a few minutes. The devotees were on the veranda, engaged in light conversation. He soon joined them and was happy in their company. It was about 2 o'clock. All were still sitting on the veranda when suddenly Pavanat appeared in the garb of a brahmachari, dressed in an ochre cloth, kamandalu in hand, his face beaming with smiles. So suddenly they're seeing Bhavanat, who's been just one of their devotees that they've known as a friend, suddenly appears dressed as a monk. He's wearing the Garo robes. He's carrying the little brass water pot that's indicated by a wandering sadhu, a wandering monk. So he's now renounced the world. And his face just beaming with that smile, the joy of having been able to make one of the scariest decisions of his life, to walk away from all material and to live each moment in the presence, depending on God and God alone. He no longer has a home. He says the poem goes, the sky my bed, the grass, the sky my roof, the bed the grass my bed. That the whole world is the home of a sannyasin. Somebody who's a monk who makes that decision they will not use their egoistic independence to earn their living, to do anything that they believe is from their own motivation, but they surrender completely to the moment, because we don't want a thought in the head, not a story in the head. We want all of our movement. Most of us, when we're ego driven, when we think that we're the doer, right? We take on this egoism, and it's always in the mind. It's cause and effect. If I do this work, I'll get this money. If I have this money, I can buy this house. If I can buy this house, I can buy this food. We see ourselves as the doer of all of these things. And for the sannyasa, this vow that the Bhavanat has taken, it's to live in the moment without a thought, literally with the mind silent, so that your inner nature, the nature of your soul, which is pure love, pure wisdom through being, then can manifest, not as thought, but as the divine, so that you see the world as God sees the world. You see yourself in everyone. You see yourself in everything. You live with the awareness that every action, every thought is a prayer, and you see the direct response in the moment of God to that. And you yourself are simply a point of awareness, watching the play of God, knowing that you are not here, that you are, in fact, like God, the container of all things, that you are not separate and subject to them, but that you are the container of all of it, free and fearless. So Kamandalu in hand, his face beaming with smiles, the master with a smile, that's his inner feeling. Therefore, he has dressed himself as a brahmachari, right? That's his inner. He's being sincere. He's being earnest. What he knows himself to be inside is manifesting outside. That's that direct manifestation of your divine nature. There's no thought, no calculation in between, no grabbing or hunger to cause you to move. You're inspired by simply being, by simply knowing the presence of the divine within you and watching it play out through actions that you won't feel are your own, because you will have gotten your mind to that subtle silence where you can see God manifesting as everything that you see and hear and feel motivated to do. That is his inner feeling. Therefore, he dressed himself as a brahmachari. Narendra, he has put on the garb of a brahmachari. Let me put on the garb of a tantric worshipper. Hazra, then you'll have to follow the tantric rituals with women, wine, and so on. Sri Ramakrishna did not encourage that conversation. Indeed, he made fun of it. Suddenly, the master began to dance in an ecstatic mood. He said, Mother, you cannot trick me anymore, for I have seen your crimson lotus feet. The master said, Ah, how wonderfully Rajnarayan sings about the Divine Mother. He sings and dances that way. The music of Nakaracharya of Kamarpurpur is also wonderful. Ah, how sweet his singing and dancing are. Ramakrishna used to feel that way about people who were just not the quality of their singing, but the quality of the love and earnestness of their own being that's being carried by that music. You know, it's that difference between hearing somebody just sing nicely and hearing somebody coming from the heart, you know, that's coming from deep within. I always think of the folk singers of the 60s, you know, just very simple music and melodies, but a very heartfelt message, earnest in their voice, you know, like that. Just when you sing, your heart is coming out. People sense it and can feel that. A sadhu, right, a seeker, a spiritual practitioner, was staying at the Panchavati. The Panchavati is that's where those 5 types of trees, isn't that right, Haima? The 5 trees planted under which it's supposed to be auspicious to meditate. 5 different trees.
I don't know exactly, but pancha means 5.
Yeah.
That I know. That maybe you got the correct definition. Panchavati.
That's
Panchavati.
what it is. Anyway, there
Yeah.
at the Dakshineshwar temple, Ramakrishna had planted those 5 auspicious trees and used to go out in that grove and meditate there.
That's why they call it Panchavati, probably.
Yes, exactly.
Pancha is 5. Yes.
Right. All right. So the sadhu was staying at the Panchavati, but he was a hot-tempered man. He scolded and cursed everyone. He came to the master's room wearing wooden sandals and asked the master, Can I get fire here? Sri Ramakrishna saluted him and stood with folded hands as long as he remained in the room. When he had left, Bhavanath said to the master with a laugh, What great respect you showed the sadhu, right? Kind of joking because the sadhu had been so nasty or did have this nasty disposition, you know, cantankerous character, but Thakur didn't care. When Thakur looks at you, he doesn't see the faults that you see. He sees the divine presence within you, and that's what he loves. He sees the real you, and you can't undo that. Your quote wrongdoing in this world is not seen by God, is not identified as you by God. It's your mind that sees it that way and holds yourself accountable, holds yourself prisoner to your own thinking. Right? But that God always looks at you and sees the divine self behind all of that, sees what the seed is behind the manifestation. He knows you as your highest self and will always embrace you as your highest self. And that our focus on mind, our focus on personality, our focus on the needs of the body as being us is what confuses us and keeps us from experiencing God. God does not leave you. It looks like that from our perspective. But what happens is we become distracted from God and lose our awareness of the presence. And to us, it feels like God has left us. And so that's why you read that in the poetry and in the scriptures quite often, because they describe it that way, because that's the way it feels. But the reality of it is that you have distracted yourself with the conditions of body-mind and have forgotten your beauty. You have forgotten that you are lovely, that you are gracious and pure, and have identified with yourself with things that are incomplete, that are partial, the body and the mind. Master smiling, you see, he too is Narayana, though he's full of tamas, right? The world is made of rajas, tamas, and sattva. Rajas is activity. You know, the kind of person who can't sit down for a second. He's got to always be moving and doing and engaged. that's a person of rajas, right? And a person of tamas is just the opposite. The person who's just can never get up. He's a real sluggard, just negative and sarcastic and cynical. Those things are all part of tamas. And then there's sattva. Sattva is this balance, this harmony. And it's sort of when rajas and tamas are equal in their proper place within you as a person, right? You're not affected by changes in the weather, by the opinions of people, the conditions of the moment. If you're sattvic, you see everything as the beloved. You're calm, you're peaceful, you don't have moods, you're not up this minute and down that moment, and you can't be provoked. Because why? Because you have found the shrine of the heart, and you have done your practice there, and you are filled with your own holy atmosphere, right? So you are always in this atmosphere of peace, this atmosphere that of the peace that passes understanding, because that's the nature of the self, where you enter this world before you become body, before you become mind, right? Before that Satchitananda goes through the projector, you are that light. Before the projector, before the movie, you are that light. The devotees were engaged in a game of, let me just say, that it's something to teach us here, that the Ramakrishna can look at this man and see, experience the man's, anger or the man's nastiness, but pays it no mind because he knows it to be unreal. He knows that what's real in that person is the image of God, the image of the beloved. And so he always looks at that. And that way he's not carried away by their nastiness. He doesn't judge them by their nastiness. He doesn't judge them by these changing conditions. He doesn't hold them accountable for that period of time because they happened to be in a bad mood, or because they were selfish, or because they were impure in some way. He doesn't look at that because he knows that's all changing, and that which changes is unreal. He looks at that in you that is unchanging, right? In you is the unchanging presence of God, like the light in a projector. What changes is the manifestation of that. The movie changes. But even though the movie is constantly changing, the light of the projector is always the same, right? Before it goes through the body, before it goes through the mind. So this is what we have to learn. This is how we have to see in each other that unchanging presence of God. And the only way to do that is to find it in yourself, because we have no way to know other people's inner world. So we always project our own inner world ideas on everybody else, right? So we can't ever step inside someone, but we can know ourselves. And if you know and assume within yourself that purity, that unchanging light of love, then you naturally begin to see that in the world around you. You naturally begin to assume that in others. And you look at it and you watch them be rude, and you just chuckle because you know that it's mother doing her play, playing her act, telling her story, and that it was nothing real. Just like if you go to the theater and watch somebody be rude on stage, you know that's their role. That's where they're at right now, and that's what they're doing right now, and it's part of their story, part of their egoistic experience. But you know that they are not the actor. You know that they are the presence that's within that self, because you have touched it within your own self. And this is why we practice, so that we can find that steady light of love, unchanging within ourselves, and take refuge there, find our identity there. Oh my goodness, it's already time to stop. Sorry to keep you over there. Let me turn off the recorder.